Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into virtual machines, networks, and something you might not know much about, reverse DNS. And, you sent over this super interesting assignment. Looks like it's from a level 4 MBO program called Expert Systems and Devices.
Yeah, it's a really cool assignment, actually. Gets into the nitty-gritty of what IT professionals need to know. And it's not just the how-to, but the why,
Yeah.
connecting everything back to the bigger picture of how IT infrastructure works.
Okay, yeah, I'm already kind of hooked. So the first part of this assignment has students use VMware to set up this virtual environment and install Windows 11 on 2 virtual machines. What's the thinking there? Why is that so important for them to learn?
Well, can you imagine if you had to buy like a physical computer for every single operating system you needed? The cost would be crazy. Not to mention the space. Virtualization lets you run multiple operating systems, all on one physical machine. It's like having your own mini data center right there on your desk. So this assignment is giving these students hands-on experience with something that's honestly like revolutionized the way IT operates.
So instead of a lab full of computers, they're just creating virtual versions of those computers within VMware.
Exactly. And what's really cool is that the assignment has them partition the virtual hard drive in a specific way.
Yeah, it mentions dividing it into 2 partitions, C for system files and E for data. Now, I've heard of partitioning, but why does it matter? Especially here.
Well, think of it this way. You wouldn't want to mix important documents with your coffee mug or your lunch, right? You want to keep things organized. Same idea here. Keeping system files separate from user data can make things run faster, make backups easier, and just keep things tidy. And that's critical when you're managing these complex IT systems.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having designated spaces for different kinds of information. And I noticed the assignment's super specific about how things are named. It even tells them to name the machines PC1 Win11 and PC2 Win11. Why is all that detail important?
Think about it. In a real-world IT environment, you could be dealing with hundreds or even thousands of devices, trying to troubleshoot an issue without clear naming conventions. Total chaos. This assignment's instilling good habits early on, teaching them how important consistency and good documentation are in IT.
So even though it's a virtual environment, they're learning things that will make them way more effective IT professionals in the real world.
Exactly. And that link to real-world scenarios gets even clearer when we look at the next steps in the assignment, which involve setting up DHCP and DNS.
I hear those terms all the time, but sometimes I get fuzzy on the details. Can you remind us what role they play in this assignment?
Imagine having to manually assign a unique IP address and all the other network settings to every single device on a network. It would be a nightmare. DHCP and DNS automate that whole process, making network management way more efficient and scalable.
So it's like they're not just setting up isolated systems, they're actually learning about how networks function at a deeper level.
Right, so DHCP acts like this automated receptionist, right? Assigning unique IP addresses to devices as they join the network. Think of it like giving each device its own phone number. And then DNS is kind of like the phone book, allowing devices to find each other using these easy to remember names instead of just these long strings of numbers.
Okay, that's starting to click for me. But why is this automation so important in this particular assignment? It seems like a pretty basic thing.
Because it's like IT management 101. It's the basis of how everything connects and communicates on a network, whether it's a small office or a global corporation. And speaking of fundamental concepts, let's jump to the next step, which is joining these virtual machines to a domain called achternaam.local.
Now, this is getting interesting. What does it even mean to join a domain? What's going on there?
It's like becoming a member of a club, right? But with, specific rules and perks. So in this case, the domain achternaam.local is a centralized network controlled by what's called a domain controller. You can kind of think of the domain controller as the head of IT for the entire network.
So what are the benefits of joining this, virtual club? What can they do once they're part of this domain?
Centralization control, that's the key. When a computer joins a domain, it has to follow all the policies and security settings set up by the domain controller. This makes managing users and devices much easier. You can push software updates to everyone at once, and the whole network becomes more secure. Imagine trying to manage security settings on hundreds of computers individually. The domain controller lets you handle all of that from one central location.
It's like setting the rules for a whole school instead of managing each classroom separately, right? I feel like this assignment is building all these layers of real-world IT practices.
Precisely. And that brings us to probably the most intriguing part of this assignment, setting up a reverse lookup zone.
Reverse DNS. I gotta be honest, that one sounds a little mysterious to me. What's so special about looking up domain names based on IP addresses?
I know, it sounds kind of niche, but it's actually super important, especially for security and troubleshooting. Think of it like this. Regular DNS is like looking someone up in a phone book to find their number, right? Reverse DNS lets you go the other way, find someone's name if you only have their number.
So if someone tries to access the network from an unknown IP address, reverse DNS can help you figure out where they're coming from.
Exactly. It's like a detective using a license plate number to track down a suspect. Reverse DNS can give you the domain name associated with an IP address, which is crucial for things like investigating security breaches, blocking spam, even just understanding how network traffic is flowing.
Wow, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. What seemed like a basic assignment is actually like a deep dive into how IT infrastructure works.
And we're just getting started. This assignment goes beyond the technical stuff. It makes them think about best practices, how to stay organized, and the bigger picture of IT management.
This is way more interesting than I expected. What stood out to you so far, listener? What's one of the most surprising or interesting thing we've talked about? Hold on to those thoughts as we continue our deep dive in part 2.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So before we got into your material, we were talking about how this MBO assignment kind of cleverly brings together technical skills and like real-world IT management thinking. It's more than just do this, do that. It gets them to understand the reasoning behind everything.
Totally. We covered why virtualization is such a game changer, the whole partitioning thing, and how DHCP and DNS automate like everything in network management. And of course, how joining a domain is like becoming a member of this like super exclusive IT club with a very, very strict head of IT.
And we can't forget that cliffhanger, right? The mysterious world of reverse DNS. Finding a domain name using its IP address. Like a backwards phone book, but for the internet.
A crucial tool for anyone who manages networks, wants to keep things secure, troubleshoots problems. And this assignment, it doesn't just have them set up reverse DNS, they actually create a reverse lookup zone within the achternaam.local domain. What does that even mean?
That's where things get really cool. Because this part shows how interconnected all these different IT pieces really are. Remember how we talked about that domain controller? Like the head of IT for achternaam.local? They set all the rules, keep everything running smoothly.
Yep, the one in charge.
Well, that domain controller is also the boss of DNS management. It actually hosts the DNS server for the whole domain, storing all the DNS records for every device connected to it.
So when a computer in achternaam.local wants to translate the domain name into an IP address, it goes to that DNS server on the domain controller, right?
Exactly. And that's where the reverse lookup zone comes in. By setting this zone up, they're basically creating this like dedicated space on that DNS server specifically for reverse DNS lookups.
So if someone tries to do a reverse lookup on an IP address within achternaam.local, that DNS server knows exactly where to find the matching domain name because of this zone.
You got it. Think of it like adding a super detailed index to this huge library. It makes finding specific information way faster.
I'm following you.
Yeah.
But why even bother with a whole separate zone just for reverse lookups? Why not just keep it all together with the regular DNS stuff?
Good question. There are a few reasons why separating them out is a smart move. First, organization. Imagine trying to figure out a DNS problem when all the records are just jumbled together, a mess. Second, security. By controlling who can even do reverse lookups, you're protecting sensitive information. It's like having a separate vault for your most valuable stuff.
So it's not just for convenience, it actually makes the whole system more secure.
Exactly. And lastly, a separate zone can actually make reverse DNS queries faster. The server's not wasting time searching through everything. It knows exactly where to look. It's like having a direct line to the information you need.
It's amazing how much thought goes into building a robust IT infrastructure, even when it's all virtual.
And that's what's so fantastic about this MBO assignment. It's not about blindly following steps. It's about getting these students to really grasp best practices and the inner workings of IT systems.
It's like peeking behind the curtain of the IT world. They're not just learning technical skills, they're learning how to think like IT pros.
You said it. That critical thinking is essential for success in IT, period. Doesn't matter if you're managing networks, fighting off hackers, or building software. You gotta be able to analyze, understand complex systems, and get creative to find solutions.
Feels like this assignment lays the foundation for those exact skills. Like a boot camp for future IT superstars.
Totally. And you know what else makes it effective? Using a virtual environment like VMware, it lets them experiment, make mistakes without breaking anything in the real world. It's like a flight simulator for IT. Practice all the important stuff before you're flying the real plane.
Love that analogy. Just like a pilot needs to understand aerodynamics, an IT person needs to get those fundamentals of networking, security, all of it.
Couldn't agree more. We've been geeking out on the technical stuff, but let's not forget about the stars of this deep dive, those MBO students tackling this assignment.
They're doing some seriously impressive work. It's one thing to read about all this, but to actually build virtual machines, configure networks, mess with reverse DNS.
They're gaining experience that will make them stand out, for sure. And it goes beyond the tech skills, right? It's about problem solving, that attention to detail, learning to work solo and as part of a team. Those are universal skills.
I'm impressed by how they're diving in, getting their hands dirty with these technologies.
Yeah.
That hands-on experience is invaluable in IT.
Absolutely. Who knows, maybe one of these students will end up being the next IT rock star, coming up with solutions we haven't even thought of, changing the game.
Wouldn't that be awesome? But for now, let's take a step back and think about everything we've discussed. What are your main takeaways, listener? What surprised you? What new questions came up? Hold on to those as we shift gears in part 3, where we'll explore how this assignment links to real-world IT applications and the awesome career paths it can lead to. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts really getting into the weeds of this MBO assignment. Virtualization, network setup, even that deep dive into reverse DNS. It's clear that this assignment isn't just like busy work. It's giving these students some serious IT skills.
Yeah, it's like this awesome crash course, right? All the essential skills you need to build and manage IT systems packed into one assignment. But let's take a step back for a second and think about the big picture. How does all this relate to what IT people are doing out there in the real world, day in and day out, and what kind of careers could this lead to?
Let's make those connections. How does this assignment mirror what actual IT professionals do?
Well, think about the core stuff here. Setting up virtual machines, configuring networks, managing users, solving tech problems, that's the heart of IT work across all sorts of industries.
So whether it's a small company, a huge corporation, even government agencies, these are skills they need.
Totally. Think about it if you're, say, a system administrator, keeping a company's entire IT system up and running. You might need to spin up virtual machines to host different applications, make sure the network settings are right so everyone can connect securely, manage user accounts so people can access the right data.
So this assignment is giving students a glimpse into the daily life of an IT pro, huh? Facing those same challenges and responsibilities.
Exactly. And these skills can lead to some pretty cool careers. System administrators, network engineers, cybersecurity analysts, cloud specialists, even IT project managers. The possibilities are huge.
Wow, that's quite a list. So it's not just about the technical stuff, it's about opening their eyes to this whole world of IT careers.
Right. And remember, it's not just about mastering specific technologies, it's about developing that problem-solving mindset. Attention to detail, being able to work independently, but also collaborate effectively. These are valuable skills no matter what you do.
So they're getting a toolkit, but also learning how to use those tools in different situations.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that adaptability is key in IT. Technology never stands still, right? New trends, new challenges. Being able to learn and adapt is what separates the good from the great in this field.
So it's not just about landing that first job, it's about having the foundation for a lifetime of learning.
Yeah.
Because IT is constantly evolving.
Absolutely. And that's why I think programs like this are so awesome. They're giving these students a real head start in this ever-changing world of IT.
Well said. We've covered a ton of ground in this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
From the technical details to real-world applications to those exciting career paths. But before we sign off, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought.
I like it. This deep dive has shown us how crucial hands-on experiences, that critical thinking, and that willingness to embrace the constant evolution of IT. But it also reminds us that learning doesn't stop after an assignment or degree.
It's this continuous journey of exploration, experimenting, always pushing yourself to grow.
Exactly. So, to our listeners out there, keep that curiosity alive. Never stop learning and embrace the challenge of exploring this incredible, ever-changing world of IT. You never know what you might discover.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.